Vlad the Impaler, the man who inspired the legend of Dracula. A ruler so feared that his enemies told tales of forests filled with corpses, skewered on stakes, thousands at a time. Ottoman armies marched into his lands, only to find themselves surrounded by seas of impaled bodies, rotting under the sun. To Western Europe, he became a defender of Christendom. To the Ottomans, he was a war criminal beyond comprehension. And centuries later, his legacy would inspire the most infamous vampire in literature, Dracula. So before we dive in, make sure you subscribe so you never miss the untold chapters of history. It really helps us keep going, and I really appreciate all of you for tuning in. The world of Vlad the Impaler was one of chaos, violence, and survival. It was the 15th century, a time when Europe was fractured, kingdoms rose and fell in constant wars, and the mighty Ottoman Empire pressed deeper into the Balkans, threatening to swallow Christian states one by one. Wallachia, a small principality between Transylvania and the Danube River, stood directly in the path of this storm. Surrounded by powerful neighbors, Hungary to the west and the Ottomans to the east, its rulers often survived not through peace, but through brutality. It was a land where betrayal was common, thrones changed hands overnight, and violence was the language of power. It was into this world that Vlad III was born in 1431. His father, Vlad II, was a noble of Wallachia who carried a prestigious yet dangerous honor. He was a member of the Order of the Dragon, a knightly order founded to defend Christian Europe from the advance of the Ottoman Turks. The name Dracul, meaning the dragon, came from this order, and his son would inherit it, becoming known as Dracula, the son of the dragon. But behind the proud titles lay a fragile throne. Wallachian princes ruled at the mercy of greater powers. At times, they were forced to ally with the Hungarians, at others, to bow before the Ottoman Sultan. Loyalty was a shifting game, and treachery was often rewarded with death. This unstable world shaped Vlad's destiny. From the very beginning, his life would be caught between empires, between loyalty and betrayal, between survival and annihilation. And it was in this crucible of constant danger that the young Vlad would learn the brutal lessons that defined his reign. In 1442, when Vlad was just 11 years old, his father, Vlad II Dracula, handed him and his younger brother Radu as hostages to the Ottoman Empire. It was a common political practice, a guarantee of loyalty from Wallachia. But for Vlad, it was the beginning of a life marked by fear, humiliation, and survival. He lived for years in the Ottoman court, surrounded by wealth and power he could never call his own. He witnessed executions, torture, and the harsh discipline of a foreign empire. Every insult, every act of dominance, carved deep scars in the boy's mind. These experiences planted the seeds of hatred, mistrust, and an unyielding will to survive. Vlad's younger brother Radu adapted quickly. Handsome and charming, Radu gained favor with the Sultan, learning the ways of diplomacy and politics. Vlad, however, resisted. He was stubborn, proud, and unbroken, even as he endured fear and isolation. The betrayal of family members also shaped him. Vlad's father and older brother had been killed in a web of political schemes, and he watched firsthand the deadly cost of weakness. These lessons would become the foundation of his future rule. Loyalty must be enforced, betrayal punished without mercy, and fear is the strongest weapon a ruler can wield. By the time Vlad returned to Wallachia, he was no longer just a boy. He was a young man forged in captivity, driven by revenge, and prepared to reclaim his father's throne with a ferocity that would terrify his enemies and shape an entire region's history. By 1456, Vlad III returned to Wallachia, ready to reclaim the throne that had been stolen from his family. But ruling Wallachia was no simple task. The principality was a land of constant danger, caught between the powerful Ottoman Empire to the south and the Kingdom of Hungary to the west. Even within his own borders, Vlad faced threats. The boyars, Wallachia's nobles, were ambitious, scheming, and quick to betray rulers who challenged their privileges. To survive, Vlad knew he needed more than armies or alliances. He needed a strategy that would command respect, obedience, and, most importantly, fear. Vlad wasted no time. He implemented what would become his signature method of enforcing order: ruthless justice. Nobles suspected of treachery were executed in public, often in horrifying ways designed to leave a lasting impression. Impalement, a gruesome technique that pierced victims on long wooden stakes, became his most infamous tool. Streets and forests outside towns were soon lined with impaled enemies, a chilling message to anyone who dared oppose him. These acts were not random cruelty. They were calculated. Vlad understood that in a land where loyalty was scarce, terror could serve as a weapon more powerful than any army. His enemies, both foreign and domestic, quickly realized that crossing Vlad could mean a death worse than anything they had imagined. Yet his reign was not only defined by punishment. Vlad also restored order to a fractured state. Roads were safer, villages protected, and crime suppressed. Travelers could move through Wallachia with far less risk than in neighboring regions. In this way, Vlad combined fear with governance, creating a state that could withstand the pressures of powerful neighbors. As Wallachia's prince, Vlad established a reputation that extended far beyond his borders. To the Ottomans, he was a dangerous and unpredictable adversary. To the Hungarian crown, he was a wary ally whose loyalty could not be trusted. And to the people of his principality, he was a ruler who could maintain order in a world where chaos was the norm. Vlad's rise to power was a turning point. He had learned from his childhood captivity, his family's betrayals, and the harsh realities of his land. Now, armed with fear as a weapon and cruelty as a tool, he was ready to face the greatest threats Wallachia would ever know, and to etch his name into history in ways that would be remembered for centuries. Vlad the Impaler's name became infamous not just for his victories, but for the sheer horror he inspired. His signature tactic, impalement, was not random cruelty, it was a calculated weapon of psychological warfare. According to contemporary accounts, Vlad could impale hundreds, sometimes thousands, of people at a time. Roads leading to his castles and villages were lined with wooden stakes, each holding a victim, criminals, traitorous boyars, or captured enemy soldiers. Travelers and armies who saw these grisly displays were often paralyzed by fear before even facing battle. One of the most notorious examples occurred during his conflict with the Ottoman forces. In 1462, as the Ottoman army advanced into Wallachia, they stumbled upon a forest of impaled corpses, stretching for miles. Historians recount that the sight was so horrifying that the Ottoman soldiers panicked and retreated. Vlad's terror tactic had achieved its goal without a single sword being drawn in that instance. Impalement itself was a slow and excruciating method of execution. Victims were pierced through the body with long stakes, often leaving them alive for hours or even days, a spectacle of suffering meant to send an unmistakable message: betrayal, invasion, or disobedience would be met with unrelenting death. But the strategy behind Vlad's brutality went beyond vengeance. By creating what became known as the Forest of the Impaled, he projected power far beyond the borders of Wallachia. Nobles, enemies, and foreign invaders all learned the same lesson: Vlad's will could not be challenged. Fear was a tool, a shield, and a weapon. This horrifying efficiency cemented Vlad's reputation across Europe. Letters, chronicles, and tales of travelers spread stories of his unthinkable cruelty, ensuring that Wallachia's prince was both feared and remembered. Vlad had mastered the art of terror, and in doing so, he had transformed his small principality into an entity even mighty empires hesitated to confront. By 1462, Vlad the Impaler had become a thorn in the side of the Ottoman Empire. Sultan Mehmed II, fresh from conquering Constantinople, set his sights on Wallachia, eager to bring the rebellious principality under control. But Vlad had a plan, and it was unlike anything the Sultan had faced. In the dead of night, Vlad launched a daring raid on the Ottoman camp. Using stealth, intelligence, and intimate knowledge of the terrain, he struck with precision. Contemporary chronicles suggest that his forces set fire to the Ottoman tents, sowing chaos and panic. Soldiers fled blindly into the darkness, many impaled or captured in the confusion. Some historians argue that Vlad even came dangerously close to capturing Sultan Mehmed himself. Whether true or exaggerated, the story spread across Europe, cementing Vlad's reputation as a brilliant tactician, a commander who could outthink empires, strike fear into the hearts of the mighty, and turn his small principality into a formidable force. But Vlad's genius extended beyond strategy. His use of terror as a weapon remained constant. Entire villages and borderlands were left with warnings in the form of impaled corpses, ensuring that any advance by the Ottomans would be met with both military skill and psychological shock. This combination of cunning, fear, and relentless discipline made Vlad the Impaler not just a ruler, but a legend. He was a man who could inspire loyalty, instill terror, and rewrite the rules of warfare in his region. His enemies learned quickly: to challenge Vlad was to risk not only defeat but unimaginable suffering. Vlad III was called Vlad Dracula, the son of the dragon. The name came from his father's membership in the Order of the Dragon, a chivalric order dedicated to defending Christianity against the Ottoman Empire. But over the centuries, that name would take on a far darker meaning. Stories of Vlad's brutal punishments and impalement spread across Europe. Merchants, travelers, and even foreign ambassadors wrote about him with a mixture of awe and terror. The man who instilled order in Wallachia became, in the eyes of outsiders, a monster. Centuries later, Bram Stoker immortalized that fear in fiction. Stoker's Dracula, a vampire who drank the blood of the innocent, was inspired in part by Vlad's legendary cruelty. Yet historical evidence suggests that many of Vlad's actions were exaggerated. Chroniclers often wrote for political purposes, or to entertain, amplifying his terrifying reputation. Vlad's legacy raises a question still debated today: was he truly a sadistic killer, or was he a ruler forced by circumstance to maintain his power through fear? His impalements, though real, were not acts of random bloodlust. They were calculated, meant to protect his people, secure his borders, and send a message to enemies who outnumbered him. In reality, Vlad was both human and extreme. A man shaped by captivity, betrayal, and war, whose methods, however horrifying, were tools of survival in a violent world. The Dracula of legend may be fiction, but the fear he inspired was entirely real. Despite his fearsome reputation and brilliant tactics, Vlad the Impaler was not invincible. His rule was constantly challenged by enemies within and beyond Wallachia. Betrayals were frequent, boyars switched loyalties, neighboring powers schemed, and even his family's rivals sought his throne. In 1462, after years of campaigns against the Ottomans, Vlad was forced to flee Wallachia, taking refuge with allies and attempting to regain his power. For a brief period, he was restored to the throne, but stability remained out of reach. His enemies were numerous, and his methods, though effective, had made him many bitter enemies. Vlad's final fate remains shrouded in mystery. He was killed in battle, but the exact details are unclear. Some accounts suggest he was ambushed by boyars, others claim he fell to Ottoman forces. His body was never definitively recovered. According to legend, his head was sent to Sultan Mehmed II as proof of his death, a grim and symbolic end to a man whose life had been defined by terror and vengeance. Even in death, Vlad's story blurred the lines between fact and myth. Chronicles, rumors, and later folklore painted him as both a brutal tyrant and a tragic hero, a man whose life and death would echo through history, inspiring fear, fascination, and countless legends for centuries to come. Vlad the Impaler's story did not end with his death. In Romania, he is remembered as a national hero, a ruler who defended his land from Ottoman invasions, upheld strict law, and protected his people in a time of constant danger. His bravery, tactical brilliance, and unwavering determination made him a symbol of strength and resilience, a man who faced threats far greater than his small principality. But beyond Wallachia, his name carried terror. In Europe, Vlad was feared as a ruthless tyrant. Tales of his impalements, his shocking punishments, and the infamous forests of the impaled traveled across borders, ensuring that even distant nobles and kings knew of his merciless reputation. To outsiders, he was a figure both fascinating and horrifying, a living nightmare of cruelty and order intertwined. Over time, fear and legend merged. Vlad's name became linked to the occult and cult-like imagery. Some stories spoke of dark rituals, secret ceremonies, and mysterious practices that enhanced his terrifying aura. The extreme cruelty he wielded in life fed the imagination, turning him into a symbol of otherworldly power and mystery. Centuries later, these legends evolved into the myth of Dracula. Bram Stoker's novel transformed Vlad into the archetypal vampire, a blood-drinking, night-roaming predator of the innocent. While the historical Vlad never drank blood, his reputation for impaling enemies, leaving corpses as warnings, and instilling terror created the perfect foundation for the vampire myth. Stories described him moving through forests at night, striking fear into anyone who dared cross him, blurring the lines between human ruler and monster of legend. Even today, Vlad's legacy continues to provoke fascination and debate. Was he a tyrant, a national hero, or something in between? Did his cruelty serve survival, or did it hint at a darker nature? And the most haunting question of all, did the real Dracula ever truly die, or does he linger in the myths, stories, and imaginations that continue to shape our view of the past? European chroniclers labeled him a tyrant, while in Wallachia, he was seen as a defender of his people. Centuries later, his life inspired the Dracula legend, a mix of fact, folklore, and imagination. Bram Stoker's vampire borrowed his name and reputation, but the real Vlad was a man shaped by war, politics, and survival, not a supernatural creature. Vlad the Impaler is gone, but his story lives on, in history, in myth, and in the dark fascination that surrounds the name Dracula. His life raises enduring questions. Was he a brutal tyrant, a patriotic hero, or a little of both? Do share your thoughts in the comments. And while you are there, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and thumbs up. It really helps us keep going, and I really appreciate all of you for tuning in. And I will see you in the next video, where we will uncover another chapter of history.